Yeah. This one's just.
Yeah, so we got schedules for each one.
Just please do anything.
Right here, there's we're always trying to figure out what square is pin. It's like, is it square to the word? Is it square to the coloring? Is it
Right now, it's gonna be.
Okay, seeing as it is 10 o'clock, I am calling the Town of Gibsons Committee of the Whole to order for July 23rd, 2024. And we're honored to be gathered on the traditional territories of the Skokomish Nation. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda. I'm looking for, I don't have Councillor Kroll to make the motion, so people have to step up.
Hands up.
Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Kroll. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. And our first delegation is Chief Rob Michael from the Gibson and District Volunteer Fire Department for the Quarter 2 report of 2024. Welcome.
Thank you. Apologies, I'm usually more prepared and I had forgot my introduction, so I'm going to be working off my phone if that's okay.
Got a very, very thorough written report that we've had a look at, so no worries.
I've got page 1 of my introduction sent by email. Maybe I'll start with some news that's hot off the press. We did have a structure protection crew deploy on the first ferry this morning heading to the Williams Lake area. So the province had, I believe, over 20,000 lightning strikes, and the weather is prime for new fire starts. So our crew is quite sought after for events like this, and they've been asked to go in assist. We've got a mixed crew, so we're not overly depleting a single department. So we have members from Half Moon Bay, Roberts Creek, and Gibsons all going on a team together. Membership currently sits at 44 firefighters, including 3 new recruits. Rising call volume and increased training standards are contributing factors to the 7 members that left the department last quarter. The focus of training for this quarter was live fire, wildfires, marina fires, hazardous materials response, and first responder program updates. Staff and volunteers also attended a number of training conferences in Q2. The fire department responded to 95 calls for service in the second quarter, including a flipped vehicle on South Fletcher Road, several vehicles on fire on O'Shea, a 2-year-old with a finger stuck in a boat, and an alarms call where a firefighter was assaulted by a member of the public. Annual hose testing was completed, with over 200 lengths of fire hose, or roughly 3.8 kilometers, pressure tested. Our quint was temporarily placed out of service with a failed brake pod that was discovered during mechanical inspection. And annual preventative pump maintenance was performed in this quarter. The fire prevention team completed 68 fire and life safety inspections, 27 referrals, and 2 fire investigations. A number of daycare and elementary school visits were scheduled, and the fire prevention team assisted firefighters with their public speaking training at one of the local elementary schools. The Fire Smart team celebrated a milestone achievement with the community of Brigade Bay on Gambier Island being recognized under the Fire Smart Canada Recognized Neighborhood Program. And I believe that 4 other communities are on their way to have the same recognition. That's all the notes that I was able to get sent on short notice. And I'm happy to take any questions that council may have.
Questions? Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, I know there's, in your report, you talk about fire investigations, and I was just going to ask through the mayor, because I know the mayor responded to a question from, I think maybe members of the community, what took so long to remove those burned out cars from the boulevard next to the supportive housing unit. So I know the mayor had responded, but I just wanted to maybe, if you could give some detail on what has to happen, why they just can't be cleared out ASAP.
Yeah,
I don't know if it has a lot. Most of the days after the fire, it was dealing with RCMP, ICBC most crucially, and then some of the private companies involved, like the tow truck business and the auto wrecker. But I'll let Chief Michael speak to the fire department's involvement in the cleanup part, and the RCMP is here as well for the next.
Nothing else to add.
Presentation. Yeah.
I just, it seemed like a long time for the car that was burnt out on the side of the road next to Cemetery Road to be removed
Right,
as well.
that
Like
too.
it's just, I think people just say, well, why can't you just take it somewhere else? Do we have to look at it every day when I drive by there?
I think it was even longer, not the one on Cemetery Road, but the one near across from the cemetery, right? Yeah. I think we know about that one too. Yeah.
I'd suggest it's a reasonable question, but certainly outside of the authority and responsibility of the fire department, unfortunately. So we somewhat wash our hands clean once the fire is extinguished, and we leave in the care of the owner or responsible party.
Yeah, I should mention bylaw worked really hard on getting those cars away too. So we can ask so many people that question today who are with us in the audience. We'll ask it over and over. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White, and to you, Mayor White. First of all, I'd like to commend the fire department on their quick action dealing with the incident in White Tower Park. The other thing is, I don't know what we can do about people on smoking, because just the other morning, I was taking our something out to the street, and I found a cigarette butt along the side of the street, and it had actually been obviously dropped or tossed, and it was still burning. You could see where the ash had burned to the filter. So, perhaps there is something in hammer at home. I know there's stuff on the town site about the proactive work of the fire department with White Tower, and I'd just like to commend you for your support with Williams Lake. I've got family there. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Not at the moment, so thank you again for your report. And on behalf of council, I echo Councillor Kroll's words. It's that time of year again, and as I've mentioned in other discussions, I know our volunteers here really take this on, this wildfire work around the province very, very seriously, and also seem to get a lot out of it and serving those other communities as well. So
we're happy that we're able to answer that call, because if we need to make that call, we're hoping that people will come and help us as well. And the members do enjoy that opportunity. They get some training and experience out of it. But I'm mindful as well that it is taxing, and we are coming off a, hot record-breaking year last year, and we're hopeful for a little bit of reprieve and that it's not as severe as last season.
Chief Michael.
Thank you.
And I will welcome up Staff Sergeant Prunty from the RCMP for our 2024 Quarter 2 statistics report.
Morning, Mayor. Morning, Council. Happy to be in front of you again with our quarterly stats for the second quarter. You will have received a package with the stats on there. So again, they are evolving. So we took some feedback from the last ones, and hopefully this one, kind of matches what you'd like to see in the stats. We've simplified it a bit so that it's more the offenses that people are most interested in. You'll also notice, because of the issue with the stats being inaccurate last year, we can't do a comparison to last year because it would be apples and oranges. So what you have before you is these are your stats for second quarter. I didn't provide a copy of the previous quarter's numbers, but I did jot a few notes down, just comparing things, just so you've got a little bit of a baseline. So looking at violent crimes, happy to say that they are down significantly. So first quarter, they were at 14 for total assaults, and it's 5 for this quarter. Shoplifting has seen an increase from 3 to 11. And check well-beings have seen quite an increase from 18 to 26. And total calls for service have gone up to 329 from 272 in the first quarter. In terms of files of note, maybe I'll address Councillor Lumley's question about the vehicles that were on the roadside there after the fire. In terms of the police role, it's never the same depending on the situation. So for that particular situation, it was an issue for ICBC and the registered owner of the vehicles to sort out in terms of getting them removed. It comes down to costing and where the vehicle's going to go and who's going to pay the bill at the end of the day, quite frankly. So as the RCMP, we will tow vehicles off the road and work to find the registered owner if they're obstructing the roadway or a danger. But outside of that, it comes down to, depending where it is, sometimes it's the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, sometimes it's the town, and often it is ultimately the registered owner or the last registered owner of the vehicle is responsible for paying that bill. So in that particular case, as Mayor White has inferred, there were a lot of people involved in figuring out who was going to move those vehicles. So. Any other questions on the stats? Maybe I'll go from there.
Council? I'll ask a basic question just about the shoplifting. I mean, sometimes we've had reports before that they might be kind of chronic cases at the same establishments, kind of over and over, and sometimes RCMP finds or even suspects that it might be kind of a ring coming from off coast too, doing some of these shoplifting, especially targeting certain places. I'm wondering if RCMP has any insights on these 11 incidents, or if they seem to be more random or unknown.
For this particular period of time, we don't suspect any kind of a ring. You're right. We have, I know last summer we had a group of people came over and pretty much went up the coast, working quite a complex scheme with a group of them. That's not what we're seeing here. And I think the reason for the increase is twofold. It is repeat businesses being hit, but also they have security in place, so they're identifying it when it's happening. My suspicion is that it could also be happening to other businesses who are either not reporting it or not aware that it's happening at the time.
Councillor Thompson? No, I'm going to you, Councillor Thompson, because you haven't
Yeah,
spoken
thank
yet.
you. not sure if this is stat or I'm jumping ahead, it's a great report, but the impaired driving investigation training that happened over 2 days, and seeing that in that 2-day period, we had 13 impaired driving charges, which seemed like almost 10%. Is that high?
That's high for 2 days, absolutely. So I will caveat that was coast-wide, that training. It was eye-opening for our members. It was eye-opening for me, and I think it should be eye-opening for the community. This was done in the middle of the afternoon. There was a lot of Facebook chatter about it, and people were surprised that we would be doing impaired driving enforcement in the middle of the afternoon. But the reality is, unfortunately, there were a lot of people drinking and driving.
Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor White. And thank you very much, Sergeant Bernstein, for the report. I really do like the new format that it's in. It's nice to see Gibsons, and we can compare it to the other areas of the community. One of the things I was, with respect to the shoplifting, it's my understanding that there's quite a bit of it happening in the purveyors of food, that just with food prices, what they are, and people bringing their own bags, there's a temptation to fill things with items that don't go through the checkout. Is that the sort of thing you're experiencing?
I wouldn't be able to pinpoint it exactly to food. It is, actually, within our community, it's more things that can be resold. Makeup, clothing, sports goods, and then recently landscaping equipment.
Thank you.
Councillor D'Andrade, did you have a question? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just looking at the SRG statistics, and there's a big increase compared from last year, second quarter, to this year for total assaults, basically 50% increase. So is there a reason?
And so Councillor D'Andrade is looking at the Sunshine Coast overall statistics. So that's for our entire detachment area, which will include Seashell, Gibsons, and all of the areas of the SCRD. And you're correct, there has been an increase in total assaults from 57 to 73 to 96. So that's, we're seeing pretty much an increase, a steady increase in the same quarter between 2002 to 2022, 2023, and 2024. And that is certainly noted by our members too.
Councillor Lumley? Oh, sorry, was that a direct follow-up, Councillor
Yeah.
D'Andrade?
Well, I
Okay,
was
go
just
ahead.
trying to, if you have an idea why this is happening.
It would be hard to pinpoint a reason. I think across the board we're seeing increases in assaults provincially, but as to the exact reason why, it could be an increase in population. We'd have to drill down to figure out the why, which it might be a more societal answer than a policing answer.
Okay, thank you.
A sociologist would need to be consulted.
I'd love to have one on staff, for sure.
Councillor Lumley?
Yes, thanks. Through the mayor, I just want to follow up on the drinking and driving. And I know a lot of questions get asked at a vehicle, like when you go through a vehicle stop anywhere, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. But I was just wondering if it was like do you think the major problem with that was just the weather and people maybe going to beaches or lakes or something and then just drinking and then just driving home? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, was it like severe? I was just curious because I know there was, and like you said, there was a lot of chatter going on, but was this a severe thing or was it kind of like, like a 30-day suspension, like someone's had like 3 beers at a lake or something and then drove home and clearly they met the guidelines, or was it worse than that? That was
I would imagine over, how many? There were 10, 11? Over that many, there's probably a range. I'm sure there would be a range of
13.
stories. But
I was just wondering if it
I
had
don't know if,
any,
Yeah, and each person tells a different tale, but this is not 3 drinks. This is a significant number of drinks in order to fail the ASD, which is the roadside screening device. If you fail that, you've had a lot to drink. Yeah.
any more questions? Thank you. Thank you, Staff Sergeant Prenti.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we are on to our quarterly reports, and the first one is Planning and Development Services for Q2 of 2024, and that is on pages 53 to 62. And I don't know if there's any updates that aren't in here or highlights, or if we could just go straight to council questions. Okay. Any questions from council? We do have our building inspector and by law enforcement official here in the audience to answer specific questions. Do you have any? Councillor DeAndretti.
I just curious, the DPA 1, when is if it's expected to still come this year? I know it's 65% complete, but what's the plan?
Director.
Thank you, through the mayor. That's a great question. I do expect to receive it before the end of the year. It's been delayed multiple times, but I'd like to bring it forward before the end of the year. The idea was to bring DPA 1 and 2 together and get them adopted together, but because DPA 1 has been delayed so far, we're just moving ahead with DPA 2 on its own.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay. Seeing none, there is kind of a subset of this report, which is getting into the OCP communications and engagement strategy. And we do have a recommendation here for council to approve it. I will go to the director on this one to introduce.
Sorry, are we on item 4.2 now? Mayor?
4.2.
Okay, great.
I mean, I don't think council had any more questions I didn't hear. Right? Did I miss? No, yeah, 4.2.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we've got Colton Kersop here from McElhaney, and he's got a short presentation on the engagement strategy.
Good morning, Council. So yeah, I do have a short presentation. It's only 10 minutes, unless you'd like to do something more express.
Thank you, Sue and Jason, for joining us. Okay, yeah, 10 minutes is good. Okay, I've got the time.
Great. So my name is Colton Kersop. I'm the Division Manager of Planning in the Vancouver region for McElhaney. Our team is excited and honored to be collaborating with council and staff on this important work. This presentation is on an overview of the proposed approach to public engagement, and we'll be pleased to answer any questions you have at the end of the presentation. So our engagement approach is guided by the International Association of Public Participation Principles. The acronym for this organization is IAP2, so I'll be saying that. And so we used IAP2 principles in the design and intend to use those principles in the delivery of the public engagement. Myself and our team members have benefited from the training and are experienced with public engagement. IAP2 has a spectrum of participation concept that's been applied to define the role of participants for the project. There are 5 levels of engagement on the IAP2 spectrum. These include inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower, and they're shown in the diagram on the screen. The public in this process will be informed about the project and official community plans and zoning bylaws so that they can be consulted and involved in the project. We will also be collaborating with some participants that have a lot to offer, and staff and council in workshops. There are only 2 or 3 entities operating at the empower level of the spectrum, and that is yourselves and the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. We have identified 9 objectives for the engagement and communication plan for the OCP update. These include building broad project awareness, providing information and education about the role and functions of an official community plan and zoning bylaw, and fostering relationships with interested parties to develop project champions and drive interest in the project. We also want to generate project interest, awareness, and positive conversation, develop accessible and engaging in-person and online engagement opportunities, consult and grow the public participant register to engage with those participants throughout the project. We want to apply an equity, diversity, and inclusion lens to the engagement activities and tools, and we would look to reduce or mitigate barriers for participants where possible. And lastly, we want to invite direct involvement of less frequently heard from members of the community. In terms of the overall project timeline, it's shown here. We've designed the project phases and milestones to be deliberately informed by engagement with your constituents by weaving engagement into all phases of the project, such that engagement informs each major phase of the project and the 2 deliverables being the official community plan and the zoning bylaw. In phase 1, we engaged with the residents' assembly and staff, and we will be engaging with yourselves in a council workshop. Then in phase 2, we will run big, broad public engagement campaign to inform the vision, goals, and objectives of the official community plan and to educate about the purpose of the OCP and zoning bylaw. In phase 3, we will gather reactions and feedback and advice on the draft OCP, and in phase 4, we'll gather reactions, feedback, and advice on the draft zoning bylaw and complete a round of refinements to those documents. In terms of the engagement schedule, we've highlighted some key milestones in orange on this chart. Before we engage with the public, as I mentioned, we will engage with you in a council workshop this fall. Our engagement schedule has been adjusted to ensure that phase 1 public engagement starts in the fall so that more residents are able to contribute to the project. After we've heard from council and the public, we will workshop with town staff and identify an emerging OCP framework with a new OCP being built to address the outcomes that it needs to deliver. With all that collaboration and input in hand, we will then prepare the first full draft of the official community plan. Then we will come back to council and present and refine this draft in a second council workshop setting before taking it back out to the public to gather more feedback. We will complete a second draft of the official community plan and then initiate the preparation of a new zoning bylaw to align with that official community plan. And we know that's important because I've noticed that you have both maps of your official community plan and your zoning bylaw on your placemats. So we will be preparing these 2 documents so that they align and can work together. Upon drafting the zoning bylaw, we'll run an engagement campaign that demonstrates how the official community plan and zoning bylaw work together and gather more feedback on that draft bylaw. We'll also be working through the project phases with the Residents' Assembly as an advisory body, and ultimately be bringing the zoning bylaw and the official community plan forward at public hearing through the bylaw adoption process. In terms of participant mapping, this is a process that we undertook with your staff to identify participant groups and appropriate corresponding levels of engagement for each group. A participant mapping session was conducted with staff as a first step. Participants were categorized as a government entity, a community group, or the general public, and were mapped based on their level of interest and influence. Participants were also organized by engagement involvement, falling into the categories of keep satisfied, manage closely, monitor, and keep informed. And participants are sorted into the 4 broad categories of the general public, First Nations, government, partners, and interest groups and community associations. And the full exhaustive list of participants included in the plan is included in the communications plan on pages 17 through 19. We will keep adding to this list before engagement launch and throughout the project as we become aware of additional participants that may want to be involved in the process. So inviting involvement is one of the key steps that we want to undertake in a much more deliberate fashion than just sending a notice out into the community. to ensure that there's a wide range of community voices involved in this process. The first step is, as I mentioned, to invite involvement, not just provide awareness. So we will directly invite all participants that we mapped to be involved. Invitations are not enough. We need to identify and proactively engage with underrepresented groups in your community. We will be doing this by asking if the project team can come to them. For example, by bringing the pop-up engagement into schools, to affordable housing buildings, and locations that are familiar to the public, such as malls, the public market, and other community event spaces. In terms of the methods that we will undertake, the best return on your public engagement investment, we feel, is to deploy a small mobile engagement tent and table setup, and to bring the engagement right into the schools and places where the public will be easily connected with. Pop-up engagement can intercept people that were not aware of the project, and this can broaden the project contacts and gather input from people that don't normally get involved. People who are curious and who are deliberately looking for engagement opportunities can also participate by attending the pop-up engagement and visiting the online engagement hub at a time and location that works for them. We can also take the engagement directly into the classroom or set up outside the courtyards of various apartment buildings, taking the engagement into a space that is safe and familiar for participants and nearby to their where they are in their daily life. Some of the methods, I just wanted to briefly show you what pop-up engagement looks like. On the left, we have a photo of the small mobile engagement tent and table at a community event in Pitt Meadows. In the middle, we have giant table maps and sticky notes in the fire hall during an open house in Salmon Valley. So we hosted 2 events in one. And on the right, posters and interactive maps used inside the classroom. These were in Fort Nelson in a grade 10, 11, 12 geography class. So these are the kinds of methods we are proposing to use in your community. In terms of what does the giant map do and what does it look like, we can use large-scale maps printed on tarps to get residents to show us what they love and what needs work, what to improve, where to grow, and what to protect. We do this so people can help us connect to where they live, shop, and work, and so that they have a literal hand in the process. We can duplicate this online using an interactive digital map with various virtual pins and virtual sticky labels that participants can stick on the online map. And the online portal can be open for upwards of a month to ensure there's ample opportunity for participation both online and in person. Another one of the methods that we propose to use is called card storming, and this method works really well in smaller groups, such as focus groups. Also works well with a high school class, with staff, and with council or the residents' assembly. This type of activity would be very familiar to them. In terms of reporting and monitoring throughout the process, we will be reporting back our findings, as well as the inputs provided by participants, staff, and council. Part of our commitment to continual improvement is to understand how the engagement process went for those involved. So we'll be gathering information from participants, including indicators of success, which is focused on how participants felt about the process and the tools and how they learned about the project. We ask that so that we can continue to target effective means of communicating about the project in future phases and future rounds of engagement. We also will be gathering engagement metrics, which is focused on the quantity of engagement, measuring who participated, how many participated, and counting the number of interactions with the project. We will also be tracking the methods of obtaining online feedback by listing all the ways and means of gathering input into the official community plan and zoning bylaw. And of course, we'll be summarizing all of this in a what was heard and done report at the end of each engagement phase. We will explain how input contributed to the official community plan and zoning bylaw, and if not, why not. This demonstrates that even though a person's input may not have made it into the plan or the bylaw, it was considered and evaluated against project objectives and not just left off to the side. In terms of communications, this is super important. No project is a good project if no one heard about it, and no one can participate if they don't learn about it. So we will be running this project with consistent project language and visuals to refer to the project, and we will communicate using a variety of mediums, including email invitations direct to all participants in our participant register, via information on the town's website, use of newspaper ads and flyers on the community notice boards. These will feature QR codes and short links that are easy to remember and type out, and or scan with your phone to direct you to the project page and community surveys and the list of community events. We'll also be using mailed notices or postcards, and of course, people will hear about the project through Town of Gibson's council updates, and we will also use the town's social media channels to provide information and awareness about engagement events. And people will naturally just find out about it by walking by pop-up engagement events throughout the process. And so just in closing, we wanted to provide council with an opportunity to share what they feel we should know about before engaging on this project. We are all ears.
Great, thank you for the presentation. And yeah, I'll just qualify this to council. We are having a workshop directly with the consultant in September, so that's an opportunity for us to kind of talk about the certain issues and directions that we want to see explored in the plan. But I think this question is more on what does the consultant need to know about the engagement, about reaching out to the community, and how we see that going. I'll go to Councillor Thompson first.
This was a really great report. I appreciated being able to see the whole process from beginning to end like that, so thank you very much. With the participant list, I recommend that we consider adding Sunshine Coast Tourism and potentially short-term rental operators. And my question was, with the pop-up engagements, I'm anticipating there's going to be a lot of questions about water posed to you, and I'm wondering how that might be handled.
Good question, Councillor Thompson. I know certainly from the report we received previously on the OCP, there's been a lot of preliminary research being done by the consultant. So yeah, I wonder if, I guess maybe one question is, will the consultant be ready to answer those questions directly or refer them to staff, or probably a bit of a mixture depending on what the questions are? But
Yeah, certainly, Mayor, through the Mayor to the councillor. One of the opportunities that we have is right now is to actually pull an inventory of the water infrastructure that exists and work with your administration to present that information so that we're prepared and understand it before engaging with the public. And also potentially that might be one of the key issues to focus some of the discussions around, is what are the concerns and what are the capacities around water.
Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I really appreciate the report. I love the details, like, timelines, process, who will be involved. I think this is great, not only for us, council, but for the public, right? I think it really clarifies and even some fear factor that many people have with OCP amendments. So this is much appreciated. I have a specific question regarding the zoning. Will the zoning engagement will involve understanding from the perspective of people who live in this or who will live, what how they would like to interact socially? The town does not have specific guidelines for high density and mid-rise buildings. So this is a particular concern for me, because we rely right now what the developers want to offer, even though there's material that describe what is important for when you put over 200 people together in one single area. So this is my question, if there will be opportunity to revise and even build guidelines. And my second question, Mayor, regards shadow. As we grow, the size of buildings grow and shadow is imposed in neighbor lots. If when we rezone for areas with higher density, if there's specific things in the zoning that can address shadow, perhaps building locations, design, orientation, so the neighborhood is not impacted. Thank you.
I see you taking notes, which is great, but these are exactly the kind of questions that we need to be bringing forward to our workshop in September, I think. Right? I mean, this is more, not so much about community engagement. This is about council coming with, because I've already got these things on my list from, that I've been compiling from council over the months and year even.
Yeah.
So just ahead, that we do plan to bring those to our workshop in September. But if you want to comment on those and the community engagement kind of
Yeah,
angle.
certainly,
Go ahead.
Mayor, and to the councillor through the mayor. You know, there will be an opportunity to look at, if we're talking about a new zone that allows for tall buildings, there's a whole host of things that go around that support that, such as design guidelines through a development permit area. And certainly if shadows is one of those key issues that need to be addressed, it can be integrated there.
Thank you. Councillor Lumley?
Yes, thanks for the report. My question was around the pop-ups. As being on council for the length of time I've seen lots of community engagement, and the idea of pop-ups, I think, is it really intrigues me because, you know, there are some, it's probably like in any community, but there's very opinionated and outspoken and forceful people that might attend like a planned engagement and prepare for it. But I think the pop-ups, I mean, my question is really to the mayor, I guess if they're true pop-ups, like, I think that would, anyway, I think I like it because it would inspire someone to think kind of on their feet and not pre-plan for some sort of, opinion, more of like a, anyway, I just hope, my question, I guess, is there are going to be true pop-ups, right? Like I'm going to be walking down towards Weingarten Park one day, and you're going to be sitting there, and you're going to ask me about the OCP, what my thoughts are on it, and I'm going to go, you know what I mean? It intrigues me. I like that idea better than all these staged engagements.
Would you comment more on that?
Yeah, certainly,
philosophy?
Mayor, to the councillor. Our thinking with the pop-ups is there could be a bit of variation between them. Some of them might last longer than others, and we would provide, lots of advance notice about those. And that's an opportunity for us to staff those events more robustly. And those folks that want to come down and ask us, they have 10 things that they want to get through with the team, they can. And there will be other pop-ups that are probably shorter in duration, maybe just a couple of hours. And they may be run entirely by administration rather than with the consultant as well. And so those are kind of those more, those quick pop-ups that are a bit more casual, a bit more drive-by.
I'm glad to hear there's going to be kind of some thinking into the range of both. I do want to comment on probably the biggest caution that we need to offer you about pop-ups, and I'm sure probably our staff already has, and SFU already ran into this problem when they started up the residents' assembly, and that is that residents of the town are sometimes about half the people that you might encounter if you do a pop-up at Sunnycrest Mall, maybe even less. So I think, and as I like that this report identifies that non-residents of the town are also people that we want input from, because I that's maybe not agreed by everyone in town, but I do think that's important. It's relevant to a lot of people who live outside of the town, are here a lot. I mean, people even walk their dogs in Weingarten Park. They'll drive here, and it's not just at places like Sunnycrest Mall where people really have to go, or the recycling depot. But I do think it's important to identify whether people are residents or living outside, find out where they live, and then that'll be really helpful for council to be able to kind of weigh that input. So that's some input for sure. That's a really big flag that anyone doing consultation in Gibsons needs to understand. I think I saw Councillor Kroll next, and then Councillor D'Andrade. Go ahead, Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White, and thank you for this report. It's great. I love the idea of the pop-ups. I use them in another role that I'm engaged with, and it's really interesting, the feedback just by where the pop-up is, the people that you engage with and respond to it. And, you know, the people you see at Sunnycrest Mall are, you know, usually quite different from the people you encounter at the IGA Plaza. So thank you for that. I was really happy to see the engagement with people with disabilities and accessibility issues. There is an accessibility committee on the Sunshine Coast. It's a regional committee. They meet again in September. So I think it could be beneficial with engagement with that community. Not everyone lives in the town of Gibsons, but accessibility doesn't really know any boundaries. So I'll just leave it at that, but thank you for a great report.
Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm thinking there's a contingent of residents that they would have very specific questions regarding the OCP. Will be there opportunity, because the survey sometimes is more general. So I'm wondering if I have a specific question, would there be opportunities to ask staff directly, and if this will be responded? I mean, it is an interaction anyway, so.
I anticipate that for some residents who are really engaged in the town, they'll probably be really having a close look at this and offering us detailed input. Sometimes even when there isn't an OCP review, we get 10-page emails or letters from some residents who are really diving deeply into issues, and all of that input will be considered, even if it isn't in the direct format of a survey or a pop-up or anything. I think that goes without saying, right? I see affirmative nods from our staff and the consultant.
Yeah, and I could just offer through the mayor to the councillor, our online presence will enable us to either work with town administration to set up a sort of a general questions email address, or we can build something that's more transparent and is sort of like submit your question and then answers are posted back up to that web forum.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Great. Well, that's some input for you. I really appreciate you coming over here and presenting this to us. And as you've heard from council, we're quite pleased with this report and really looking forward to this process. We're excited about it. Thank you. Next, we do have to pass a motion here. So we need to actually approve this consultation plan. So moved by Councillor D'Andrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. Any discussion? All those in favor? The motion carries. Infrastructure Services Department, Q2 report. Got our manager filling in here for the director, which is good. Thanks for coming, Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor White, and thanks for the opportunity. I'll try to keep it, there's a lot in here. I'll just try to keep it short, and I'm just going to point on things that were close to me during this quarter.
Sure.
And then I can field any questions afterwards. Staffing updates. We have an accepted offer on the senior operator position, which had been vacant for quite some time. Very excited. They are going to be starting in 2 weeks. 2 new positions were added to the infrastructure department as part of the 2024 budget, and the engineering technologist and a full-time laborer in the Parks Department. The full-time labor in the Parks Department has been filled, and I believe they are still recruiting for the engineering technician. It's quite a few projects on the go. Feel free to bring me back to them if you have any questions on them. The centrifuge replacement project, the supply contract was awarded for the equipment,
and we're just putting together the work plan for the installation and the construction of it. And the project's estimated to be finished in Q4. Well 3 upgrades, we've started refining the scope of the project, and we are working towards awarding contracts to all the consultants to complete the design with a completed estimation Q2 2025. White Tower Pond in Q2 construction was completed. The project is substantially complete in Q2 with the estimation to be completed in Q3, which did happen. There's quite a bit of stuff here. Moving over to the utility operations. So we did fire smart inspections at all the works yards, which was quite eye-opening, and it really led us towards a big cleanup, brush cutting, making sure that we're not leaving ourselves at risk for any fires, which translated into also doing all the parks and trails. So we have a very good report, and we've been working towards basically knocking off everything that was recommended to us to do. The wastewater treatment plant did get delivery of a new 4x4 pickup truck. The HVAC systems for the School Road Reservoir and for the MCC room was a carryover capital project from last year, and they are all complete, and we're ready for a hot summer. We completed our annual maintenance, UV maintenance, cleaned the grit from the diffusers, and overall, I'd really like to note that the treatment process has been performing at a high level. It's been very well. We've had one report back that's below any detectable limits that the lab can detect. So I'm very proud of that, actually. Moving on to water distribution, we did we're flushing in Zone 1, which is an annual program. We had to replace the main flow meter in well 1, which we wanted to do at the time that we were chlorinating. So that all went well. We had a meeting with our drinking water officer, who's let us know he's on his way out and there's going to be a new one coming in. So we just got the update there. Reviewed everything. Everything is good with our water quality report, and he just wanted us to review the emergency response plan and update some of the contacts at the back there, which we should do every year, and we are on that. All water samples were good for Q2. In the sanitary system, we repaired a manhole outside of the sewer treatment plant that got damaged. And then it was a quick response from Public Works, and we completed some smoke testing all over town, and most recently Periwinkle Lane. The water system, in Q2, we did find a large leak down here in Gower Point, which we shut off, repaired, and then replaced the service to the fuel dock. There might be some more work to do there in the future, but the leak has been mitigated and everyone's in water. There were 14 service leaks found and reported. 11 of them were town responsibility and 3 of them were on private side. We were also, through the fire hydrant maintenance program, discovered 4 hydrants leaking, which can be quite common after they get used. They aren't turned specifically like tight. They weep out the drain hole. So it's very important that we continually monitor those. And we completed the valve exercising as well in Zone 1. At the wastewater treatment plant, we did some training. We sent 4 staff for some wastewater treatment courses, and 3 staff achieved additional certification. Actually, I'm going backwards here. With the roads and sidewalks, we did a line of sight program in Q2, which is very successful, and it involved parks and public works. We also did extensive streetlight repairs. During Q1, the snowfall, we were out plowing in the middle of the night and the crew wrote down all the streetlights that weren't working. And it was an extensive amount. I believe it was over 25 that had to get repaired, and those were all repaired in Q2. We also installed a new crosswalk at the on Garrett Point Road at Dougal Park. When it comes to equipment, it was a new mandate that we weren't anticipating. All of our dump trucks had to have vehicle safety warning systems installed in them that beep if you're to drive away with the box up, and that's a provincial mandate. So that came out, and we immediately got all that installed. Parks had a lot of extra work with the film crews in Q2, flag raising, lowering bollards, banners, streetlights on and off, cleanup, waking up early, opening gates. It was quite a bit of work. And a couple other highlights is we completed pressure washing around all the parks, Holland Park, Wine Garden, Five Corners, Town Hall, and Tomco Sports professionally pressure washed the Parkland tennis courts. And they came out looking brand new again. Facilities maintenance is sort of a one-man department. Peter's very, very busy. He helped out with the fire smart inspections. He's helped out the treatment plant with some pump maintenance. He did get his new truck and tools so he can get more work done. He is now situated out of the treatment plant. We just really have an office space for him or a shop where he can keep his tools. So that has been the best fit. And he's also helped, small projects like gutter replacement at the Kinsman Hall, new roof at the Public Works building. He was helpful with getting all those AC units installed for us and just continuous improvements around the town. And I'd like to open up for any questions. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any questions? I see Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. Great report. Really appreciate all the things you've highlighted in it. Earlier this month, I believe there was an issue with a gravel infiltration which affected the Rouse Road lift station. Was the source of that infiltration determined?
Good question.
Mr. Mayor, that was in Q3, but I don't mind answering.
Please do.
Okay, yeah, we believe it was, so there's some manholes down in the area that were raised at one time, and they were raised with bricks and no mortar. So during the construction of that new playground in the little area down beside the public market, we assuming with machines track, although we did make it very obvious to them and we pointed it out and we spray painted it and had an on-site meeting, they are tracking across it, they are leaving materials on top of this one specific manhole, and it kind of crumbled and a bunch of gravel got in there. So that's what we believe happened on that one.
Okay, follow-up if I may.
Go ahead.
I happened to come home fairly late last night and I noticed the street light at the foot of Gibsons Way at Five Corners is out.
Still?
So it's a very dark crosswalk.
That one's a chronic one. I've heard, I've passed on concerns from residents about that 3 or 4 times.
Yes, Mr. It is on our radar. I have been waiting to learn exactly which 5. I heard it's five lights out there in a string. In order to direct our contractor to the right location to fix what's happening. I just haven't been in town during dark hours to see it for myself.
Did you take a photo, Councillor Kroll?
I will, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
He'll be there at 2 a.m. tonight.
That has been the challenge.
Yeah, okay. Sometimes we need councillors to help with the off hours. Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 questions. One regards the Charmin Gooseberg Creek Restoration. It talks about staff met with members of the public. So I'm just curious, what members are neighbors or, because stakeholders, I understand that probably some organizations and Squamish Nation or something. My second question, it's kind of a suggestion as well. Given that there's so much need for water stewardship in town, but even more in the Sunshine Coast, it also always amazes me when we find leaks and the amount of water that we save or don't lose by finding the leaks. So I wonder if there's a way of putting this in the table so we can say, well, this year, and this will be kind of showcasing when we lobby for whatever, when we have conversation with the SRD, because I don't think everybody's aware of necessarily how much water can be saved by the maintenance that we do in town. So I think this is very important. And it will be nice if we know even some bulk numbers, and even over the years, how much have we addressed?
Yeah, that might be even, I know the CAO is in constant communications with our communications coordinator about communicating some of this. And I mean, I will say, based on that concern, I was really pleased with the Coast Reporter's coverage of that time that a leak was identified. They really gave it the attention I think it warranted and deserved after that report came to council from the Infrastructure Services Department on that.
We do have a water data page on the website.
We do have a water data page on the website.
I know, but we don't have how much leak we have like a.
Well, the data page has a lot of data on it.
It's a work in progress. I don't know if you've looked at it recently. We have been showcasing, we have the water over the years, how much it's decreased after the installation of water meters. We have our annual monthly comparison. So it does show how much the town is using each month for the past 4 years. And there is a stark increase this past winter because of a leak. So that is shown on the graph. We didn't explain why. And then we also we're tracking our weekly and monthly current water use at the present time in cubic meters for the entire town. So if there is data that you think would be of interest that we could add to that page, let us know, because it's sort of, we're trying to figure out what is important to communicate there. And so if you have some specific ideas, that would be great to incorporate.
Maybe that is just that point about explaining why, bridging that when we have some of that data, having some a bit of a narrative in there saying that, explaining to people that the reason it shot up in the winter was because of this leak. It's because it's a really great. Councillor DeAndrade, you're right that getting those messages out there is important, and I ask about this at the SCRD whenever they have a water report. Is about leak identification, and it seems, and sometimes that isn't directly shared. It's still a challenge. It seems like some of at least in one of the water services there last year, it's in much better shape on a different part of the Sunshine Coast because of either leak identification or the identification of like really high users that were made to reduce their use last year, which really unfortunately caused one of the water systems to be in dire straits last summer, but it's looking much better this summer. So I think it's good to explain those and tell the stories.
And we're really trying to get out the message too that we can't, SCRD calculates their water use differently than the town, so we can't compare use in that way. So we're trying to remind folks of that.
Okay, Councillor DeAndrade, you did ask about 3 questions in one, so I don't want to lose those ones.
The first one is
because I think there was one about members of the public and charming.
I just
don't want to forget.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, through the mayor, I'll have Michelle answer question 1.
sure.
Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor. The engagement was with private property owners that have the creeks that are running through the property. So properties that would be impacted impacted in a good way from the restoration work.
Okay, Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. The whole metering issue, we don't have meters on hydrants, I wouldn't think, do we?
Sorry, Councillor Kroll, there's a garbage truck or something outside that you probably can't hear, but it's interfering with our hearing of you. Could you repeat that?
Oh.
Or at least mine.
The garbage truck must be at your end. It's all quiet here.
Yeah.
No, there aren't meters on hydrants, is my understanding.
He's asking if there's meters on hydrants.
Hydrants, yeah.
Yes, through the mayor. Not on the hydrants, but when we use a hydrant or allow a contractor to use a hydrant for their project, we will be metering the water use. And there is a fire hydrant permit that they should be applying for. But when we do our flushing, through the flushing program, we do calculate and use a meter for everything that we're flushing.
Thank you. And follow up, if I
Yep.
may. So, sort of to Councillor Giandretti's issue, because we do meter every property in as much as possible, we know what we pump out, we know what we bill for in metering. So anything in between is a leak, but it takes that follow-up billing period to actually be able to equate the volume that has been saved with the repair of a leak. Is that correct?
Yes, for the most part, not all unaccounted for water will be considered a leak. There's a formula for it that is an industry standard.
Thank you.
Any more questions from council on the infrastructure services report? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Manager.
Thank you.
And we will go to corporate administration and legislative services. So this is a very thorough report. I don't know if the CIO wants to introduce it or go straight to questions or.
Just highlight,
Or an
thank you,
introduction
Mr.
for any-
Mayor, through you. Just highlight a couple of things. The strategic plan, it's updated. That's keeping track of the actions that have been identified there. So that's relatively current. Also want to highlight that we have a report, our second this year, from the Homeless Outreach Program. And certainly shows the tremendous work that's been done out there, and Chantel Burke in particular, sort of a one-woman show. So I encourage everyone to check that out. If Rebecca wants to comment anything on the report beyond those two items.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I feel like it's pretty thoroughly discussed in there. You can see we provide support across the spectrum to other departments that touches on a lot of matters within the strategic plan. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, yeah, and I really appreciate those, that kind of those connections in that report to the strategic plan, and we branching out to some of those initiatives that are being done for the strategic plan. I just wanted to add to those comments from the CAO, really significant news that I didn't see in the finance report, I don't think, or in this report, that I want to make sure isn't skipped over, and that's that BC Housing has confirmed the increase in funding for that homelessness outreach program that we've been requesting for a long time and waiting kind of nervously for. So we now have funding for the homelessness outreach worker to be full-time year-round. So it's really significant because of the work that the CAO has also mentioned, and also because it's a bit of a unique situation in the province. I think it's not a lot of municipalities have their own homelessness outreach program, and it really speaks to the effective work that is being done here, and also our finance department's work in administering that program. I see council. I think I may have seen a hand. I always see Councillor Kroll's yellow hand up now. But I'll go to Councillor Kroll first.
Thank you, Mayor White. To the comment you just made about the support from BC Housing, Communications already has a briefing on that on our website, and a link to the provincial document announcing the funding, so that's really encouraging and great work on communications getting that out so quickly. The other thing is, and the CIO mentioned it, was the amazing work that Chantel's doing. And I'm a little concerned that she is a one-man show or one-person show. And I think it would be prudent if there's any way we can find someone that she could perhaps mentor, that she has some backup, and that that she's not just out there all alone all the time. And I don't know if it's possible, but it's certainly something I would support.
I will tell you, it took a lot of work to just get the full-time funding, but yeah, just based on the need of the program coast-wide, the next steps will certainly be to say, could you give us more funding for more staff and maybe a part-time person to, but we're really appreciative of the funding we've got so far. That's the, and I will say, part of homelessness kind of ebbs and flows unpredictably, and or the challenges do. So one advantage of having a contract worker is she can say, okay, I think now is a good time to maybe take a week off and get a break, and all people working in this field need some time off. So that she's been getting very good at that. That's part of the work too, is realizing when you need to take a break from it. So that's been happening recently, which is I think good for the sustainability of the program. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. To your point, Chantel is able to take a break, and I hope she does, because in anyone dealing with the sort of thing that she's dealing with, there is the opportunity for burnout. But also she's dealing with vulnerable people. So in that period that she's taking a break, that tends to be when people fall through the cracks. So I would certainly advocate, if there is a way that we can find additional funding to get her some backup support, I think it would be money well spent.
Yeah, I'll also, again, this is really speaks well to the program, that it's just getting better and better in partnering with other programs. So a lot of the work that Chantel is doing is supporting other social workers and outreach workers on the coast in their involvement with certain clients, because there's a lot of overlap, and she's supporting them. So it's a partnership. There's a lot of collaboration. So sometimes the other and VCH, I will say, has really tremendously stepped up in serving our community in this area, and part of it is just because human resources were so difficult 2 years ago, and post-pandemic there were all these positions open, and now all those positions are full. So there's a real difference in the way that they're being able to help serve the community, and there was some additional. The complex care phase 1 support from the province helped with that too, to add more positions for Vancouver Coastal Health.
Thank you.
Councillor DeAndretti's next.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, these quarterly reports, they're getting better and better. I really appreciate the information about Everybody Deserves a Home program, because right now we rely on your updates, but this is a more descriptive and it's more detailed. One thing, I went to the page as well. It's not clear, at least to me and perhaps to the public as well. Is she just serving Gibsons? Because my impression she serves the Sunshine Coast. And perhaps this could be written here as well. And because she's not really staff, right? So I think it's good for people understand. And the funding is just provincial, or do we get funding as well from federal government? Or we may have not, but is it something that the federal government would support?
Yeah, in bits. So the provincial government has kind of the core funding, definitely, now through BC Housing for the homeless outreach program. But we did have a really great opportunity. Councillor Kroll and I both attended an event at St. Bart's Church, I think just last week, it was recent, where MP Weiler came and talked about New Horizons funding for a number of organizations in the Gibsons area, and then there was another one in another event on this in Sechelt too. And New Horizons is federal funding, and New Horizons provided, I think, a little under $10,000 to really focus on some seniors programs through this program, and that's been mostly being carried out through some outreach programs directly at supportive housing, which is some art nights and kind of engagement nights for people, and there was another one, yeah, also the work that's going on at the Marine Room, which is some of these self-care days where the outreach worker will go and have events for people to come in and get a haircut or quick services that the rest of us can regularly fit into our daily lives, but more vulnerable people need a little, yeah.
Just a clarification. I mean, I'm just trying to understand the relationship, because it seems to me that we give the direction in a way of what she needs to do, or is BC Housing, or there's a board? I'm just trying.
There's a contract with BC Housing for the homelessness outreach program, so there's a lot of, yeah. And I think we approved it. I think that came to council at some point, so. That was a long contract with a lot of, many, there's a lot of criteria in there that need to be met. And then on the Sunshine Coast level, it is definitely a Sunshine Coast program, but Rain City also has a program. So when I mentioned partnerships earlier, and Vancouver Coastal Health is largely based in Sechelt too, right? So it's kind of everybody works out. Okay. What makes the most sense, and Chantel spends the majority of her time in Gibsons, but other outreach workers spend the majority of their time in Sechelt, so they all kind of coordinate that way, and Chantel definitely goes to Sechelt as well when called upon. Other questions on the entire report? Okay. Great, thank you. We have Finance and Human Resources. First report. I don't know. I'm sure you're prepared to speak to it as the director, though I don't know if you wrote it.
Yes.
It was probably prepared over a number of months, I imagine.
Yeah. Yes, Mayor White. I did not prepare this report. The former director of finance did, with input from managers in human resources and also finance. I've reviewed it. The only observation I have to add on it is to note that the town has been quite successful in recent years in winning major grant awards, which is great. On many of the major ones, it seems to be in quite early stages of actually executing the projects, the most challenging part after winning the money. And of course, there will be a lot of administration in looking after all these grants, but when they're big, they're definitely worth it. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, through the mayor. I don't want to get too into details. Obviously, I don't want to somehow, throw the director.
Come on, put him to the test. Yeah.
I do appreciate what he just said, and the fact that I think this was brought up by us as well, is the fact that, and I get it, it's how the province and I guess through the federal government fund municipalities now, but I think we did. It's important, I think, and it's great that that the director is also concerned with the possible capacity for the town to actually keep applying for grants, and then so I appreciate that train of thought. My other one was, I mean, and this is only because I guess the mayor, like you said, this council can go out and do reviews and maybe point out streetlights. There's the one thing on here, it says Thrive, the small business thing about the public art path. So even when it was happening at the prior council, and I just wasn't really appreciating what we were trying to accomplish at the time, and I don't think we accomplished it, because the public art that was given to council seemed really cool and exciting, and then our translation of that was really like, I don't think I was, except for the whale, I think I voted against or was not in favor of a lot of the public art. And I was just walking through a trail the other day, and it looked like paintings were like stapled to a tree, and one was already fell off onto the ground. So my one question was, like, it says the extension continues to be granted. I'm not sure what we're doing for public art as the extension continues to be granted. And the other question was, like, do we have any plan to maintain the public art? I guess that's already been. I mean, it might not be directly financial, but it was just. It's on the report. I just wondered what the plans are to kind of to maintain anything that is considered public art, and if that's what these funds go towards. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe I don't know if staff can elaborate, but I do know the extension is specifically for there was kind of a couple phases to this project, and one phase, the final phase, was to do work specifically with the Squamish Nation. And the Gibsons Public Art Gallery is engaging in a partnership basically with this grant with the Squamish Nation in contributing to the public art path. And I think it's just been, it hasn't come off yet. Like, they're still kind of going back and forth on it. And I am pleased that the Public Art Gallery is involved in this, though, because they have successfully worked with the Squamish Nation in the past, and having exhibitions there and having a piece of art outside of their gallery. So I think they're the right person they're the right organization to lead this, and it's just been a matter of waiting, because there's a lot of demand for I think Squamish Nation art these days from the more lower mainland municipalities and communities that also work with them. I see
Mayor,
Director of Finance.
I can add that coming into 2024, there was 26,000 of the 50,000 left. So it's about half done.
Okay. Was there another question there too? I forget, but I think maybe that might be for Manny to answer, but I suspect kind of overseeing, looking after the art is something that's kind of automatically integrated into the work of our Parks Department at some level. CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the project was an art project funded by ICE-T, I believe, in UBCM, but was a committee formed for that recommended the art. So it wasn't so much that the town sort of picked those projects. They're always in the eye of the beholder, as public art is meant to be, and everybody's got different views. Some of that art will last longer than others. That's a good question. I appreciate that. Some of them are meant to age in place. Others will need some maintenance. We'll sort of monitor that, and we're trying to provide a space around us for people to enjoy it and comment as appropriate. The project also has a map which is online, and it's at the galleries, and so encourage people to walk the trails and see the art with sort of a combination of those two pieces. There's around 20,000 There was a set aside from that budget, which is still there, to support work between the art gallery and the Squamish Nation. And that's the work that remains out of that project, and we've received an extension from the grantor to continue that work.
And I'll just follow up to take the opportunity too, because I think it was definitely mentioned in one of the reports express some appreciation for the work our communications coordinator and Parks Department are doing for Helen's Way, which is where some of this art is, and connected to Ingles Trail, where I think some of the art that Councillor Lumley just mentioned is too. I think it was when Track initially built that low gradient trail, that would have been back in 2015, I think, and now it's really well used by the community. There was that decision to honor Helen Alp and call it Helen's Way. And the vision then was to actually have some signage, obviously naming it Helen's Way, and also having a little bio of Helen and a photograph. And Helen, I think most people will remember was the woman who would go up and down, a really true character in Gibsons, who would go up and down the hill collecting recyclables in her cart. And we wanted to honor use the low gradient trail to honor how she would be doing that on a daily basis. So I'm excited that signage is complete and it's going to be installed soon. So I wanted to mention that as part of that in connection with this conversation. Are there any other questions, Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the Director of Finance. It might be too soon to ask this question because it really extends to September, but pertaining to any outstanding balances for property tax, how we're looking at tax deferments compared to previous years, just with the struggles of our cost of living, and do you have any feedback on where we sort of sit relative?
Through Mayor White, I understand that the current year experience mirrors 2023, and I haven't heard of any difficulties or concerns from the public or individuals.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, we're ready to dive into a major discussion and decision-making process here, which our finance department has been working hard on. I don't know if, does council want a little break before we do this? Okay, I see some nodding. Yeah, okay, let's have a 5-minute break. get back to order here after our recess. I don't know if, I mean, staff has introduced us to this material before, but I'll just look to see if, and I do expect, I know council's been deeply considering these applications and the whole approach to permissive tax exemptions for quite some time now. But I will look to staff to see if there's an introduction to this particular staff report on our agenda today.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have prepared an introduction. Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm here to present the 2025 Permissive Property Tax Exemption Report. On July 9th, 2 weeks ago, staff presented a supplementary report that detailed land use for each permissive tax exemption parcel lot. This report can be considered as part 2 for the 2025 permissive property tax exemption process. The town received 19 applications in total. Permissive tax exemption falls under Section 224 of the Community Charter. The sections that pertain to the 19 applications are charitable, philanthropic, not-for-profit corporations, places of public worship, athletic or service clubs, and licensed care facilities. The report lists which organizations fall under the applicable sections of the Charter. In 2024, there were 2 new applications, the Gibsons Curling Club and Sunshine Coast Community Service Society, for the property they lease at 938 Gibsons Way. In addition, an update has been provided for 571 Shaw Road, for which Phase 1 of the housing construction is now complete. The permissive property tax exemption listing is attached to this report. The applicants have been grouped according to the applicable sections under the Community Charter. And as you may notice this year, in previous years, we had grouped it under roll number, but this year it was grouped in sections. Gibsons Curling Club and Sunshine Coast Community Services at the 938 Gibsons Way have been added on the listing at 100%, and that was just so that council would be able to see the full impact of a permissive tax exemption. Staff recommend that the bylaw readings be scheduled for September 10th for first, second, and third reading, and bylaw adoption be passed on October the 8th. And the pieces that have been left blank on the report are for council to determine the term for permissive tax exemption. Last year, it was 1-year term that was passed, and in previous years, the term for permissive tax exemption has been for the duration of council term, so they'd been passed for a 4-year period. And so at this point, I believe you have 3 more years on council, but last year you passed for 1 year, so I had suggested in the report that it could be 1 or 2 years. And then the other piece for discussion are the actual levels of exemption. And that's it.
Okay, thanks. And regarding the levels of exemption, I know we can kind of ballpark it here by looking at the 100% numbers in front of us, but is staff able to kind of give us quick answers on, as we work through this on?
Yes, I did do a bit of some calculations ahead of time, just to give you a ballpark idea if particular reductions were put into place. And these are just global applications of a percentage, not one by one. And certainly you can choose to say one by one if you would want a particular property exempted at X percentage, but I did do like a global application. So I looked at the places of worship properties, and if all of them were reduced by 25%, and this is the permissive because they also do already receive statutory exemption, but if they were all reduced by 25%, the reduction in property tax exemption would be approximately $18,000. If they were all reduced at 50%, the reduction would be approximately $35,000. So that was one of the calculations that I did. The other calculation that I did was just looking at the charitable, not-for-profit, the athletic club as well. So that category lists 7 properties. And so if there was a 25% reduction, and those are the ones that are right now at 100%, that reduction would be approximately 22,000. And then at a reduction of 50% to 50%, that reduction would be 45,000 approximately. I hadn't looked at.
Councillor Lumley has a question.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's
This is,
okay.
when you say there's a 25%, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around what you're saying. So 25% reduction in the exemption, it actually results in an increase of taxes to the town, does it not? Like if, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it. So a 25%, like if they get 100% reduction now and you reduce that reduction by 25, would that increase the taxes for the town $18,000?
Yeah, yes.
So it's
yes.
an increase in taxes.
Yes, and what I mean is it is a decrease in terms of the burden that's being spread onto the other property owners. That's what I meant to say.
Oh, okay, all right.
But it
Thank
is
you.
an increase because then those properties would be paying the taxes
Yes.
themselves.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, Councillor DeAndretti.
Thank you. Thanks, Lonnie. I missed the 22K and 40K. Who are the?
Who am I applying that to? Who did I refer to? I referred to the properties that were exempt at 100%. And so that would be in the listing, in the actual listing that was attached. That begins at, it starts from Gibsons Community Building Society all the way to the end.
Okay, thank you. So it's 25 and 50%.
Yes, I didn't, I just arbitrarily chose those. And I chose up to 50% based on Mayor White's letter that he had that was sent to all the property owners from last fall, looking at possibly 50% deduction, so I went up to 50%.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason our rationale for that previously was the thinking that, I mean, even if, what we've seen in other municipalities is even if councils considering approaching these differently, sometimes other municipalities are phasing it in and not, I mean, it always depends on the situation, but I think, at least in one example, I've seen the city of Victoria deciding that they are no longer going to be giving exemptions for parking lots and phasing that in each year, kind of saying, they're not giving exemptions at all, but it's kind of they're doing 20, I think, over 5 years, and not expecting it all to be at once, I think is the policy they're doing. So that was the thinking and talking about a percentage in the letter. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. And to your point and the letter that went out, what we were specifically looking at was where there's underutilized land in the form of parking lots, adjacent lots that aren't being used at all or for minimal use. And these are opportunities where housing could be created, and particularly in light of the fact that most of these groups are already registered nonprofits, if not charities. They have the exclusive options of being able to work with programs like BC Builds and BC Housing and some of the other funding opportunities for creating housing in the community. So I think, I didn't see a lot of people coming back to us and saying, hey, we're looking at options for creating housing. We still, we want to work with you to maintain our tax exemption. So my gut feeling is our letter didn't have a lot of teeth in it.
Okay, thanks. I thought it had a lot of teeth in it, actually, but we didn't get much response. I feel from Yeah, I agree, Councillor Kroll. I think some of the responses we've seen and some of the, I mean, it varies. They vary a lot, but considering some of the responses we're seeing here, it doesn't look like a lot of time was put into some of these responses, and which leads me to feel people are kind of expecting the status quo. Though I want to be clear, we indicated very differently in those letters. So in that letter that went out, so I don't think we should be concerned about that. We've given the organizations a heads up for sure. Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question regarding models. There are two models, for example, for Shaw Road. I know that technically we cannot give exemption for marketplace or above, but I wonder if the model that the Sunshine Coast Affordable Society uses, because they charge regular market to compensate, if this is like a legal and possible, because I remember having a brief discussion with the Director of Finance. And also the Community Building Society, the market, because they have vendors and it's commercial property. So that I understand technically could not be exempted. But if the model that they use, in order not to charge, they collect to finance, if this is legal as well. I'm just trying to understand if we...
I can say it absolutely has been legal for us to give them exemptions as we have in the past. And I mean, we have staff with some history on this who could comment on that. Whether, it's definitely something to look at in the future. I mean, there's always these different situations, including the fact that, I mean, the market is on land that the town owns a considerable portion of. But we're going to have to make a lot of considerations today going forward on this. I've got Councillor Thompson next, I think. And we probably, at some point, I think we're going to have to start looking at them one by one, or at least group by group, but this is the time for, this is a time for more general questions.
Yeah, and that's sort of where I was going with the reports are so well laid out, and there's such a large volume of data presented. It certainly speaks to the fact that we're not taking these considerations lightly. So it's a matter of where to start in looking at this. And for me, the first is tax exemptions that are being given on unused vacant properties. That one seems like an easy starting point. The second is the 100% tax exemptions that are being given on the rather significant parking lot space outside of the buildings that are already receiving statutory exemptions. We had that excellent mapping system with aerial images that were presented at the July 9th Committee of the Whole. And we're looking at parking spaces. This is like paved parking spaces, not even including green space. And those spaces are representing as much as 70, 75, 80, 81, 83% of a parcel that is receiving 100% tax exemption. So maybe that's the place to start.
Okay. Thanks for that suggestion, Councillor Thompson. I'm just writing a few notes down here because Councillor Kroll did bring up the aspect of of concerns I've heard from council, and I think that we've communicated to the community too. One of those aspects is underutilized land that could be used for housing and trying to encourage that use. I think that's one of these aspects that I think council's indicated that we want to consider. Another one I'm hearing from Councillor Thompson is the the notion of should we be giving tax exemptions for parking, and we've certainly seen other communities grappling with that, and communities like Victoria, which is really really serious, taken active transportation really seriously. I mean, and we've just passed our active transportation plan. Does it make sense policy-wise to really, it depends on the parking too, I think, but like have empty parking lots and say that this is something we should be providing tax exemptions for. It's really something I think that councils everywhere are reconsidering. Tax equity, I think, is a big one. Looking over all of this is which we see probably all over the country, but certainly in BC as asset management costs are growing, as we've got more and more pressures on us as a municipality, taxes are rising for all of the taxable properties. Pressures on local governments are rising in terms of just covering the basic asset management. So tax equity is really, to me, a really growing concern in this conversation. And then I think a fourth one that I've identified here in our conversation is community contributions as well, and considering that, you know, what and we do ask in the questionnaires for this tax exemption, what community contributions are being offered to the entire community, and that's really a consideration we have to make here. And I see, so I just wanted to frame this a bit with those four. I don't think it's one item we really need to focus on. I think I've identified four, maybe there are some others, but those are all considerations I've heard from council over the past, over this term so far. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. And, you know, to the points you've just made and the point that both councillors, Dandretti and Councillor Thompson made, you know, my gut feeling is people were given an opportunity to maintain the tax credits they're getting, provided they were, you know, yes, address their contribution to the community, but the vacant land or undeveloped land is glaring. And I think in light of the fact that we haven't had a huge positive response from a number of groups who are in a perfect position to say, hey, can you help us? Can you work with us? Can you steer us in the right direction to, you know, help us develop this underutilized land? That just hasn't happened, to my knowledge. And I think that, you know, the report that Finance presented for our last meeting with the actual building size and the property size, it's you know, it's a huge eye opener. The other thing I don't believe, because I have been asking a lot of people, just day to day passing around, are you aware of how the permissive tax credit system works? And they think it's just an arbitrary decision that we make as a council that lets certain people not pay their taxes. And what they don't realize is if they're a taxpayer in the town of Gibsons, they are paying those taxes for those properties and facilities. And that, there seems to be a big disconnect there. People not realizing, they think, oh, we're just generous people letting people off the tax hook, not realizing that they're picking up, if I'm correct in this report, they're picking up the $277,391 that is now spread over everyone's tax bills in the community. And I think if more people were aware of that, there'd be less pushback if we become a little more aggressive in, you know, dealing with some of these underdeveloped properties. I'll leave it at that for now, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kroll. Thanks particularly for expanding on my points about tax equity. It's very, very important that we communicate that and consider it, that it's all the taxpayers in town that are really giving these exemptions, and council needs to really consider whether we can justify that. I do want to make sure we start, I start framing this debate in a way that, it's discussion in a way that we start actually looking at these one by one and making some decisions, but if any counselor wants to suggest how to start that, I appreciate Counselor Thompson's kind of already done that, but, or just start questions or continue to have general comments, that's fine too, but I just want to give everyone the heads up that I think we probably do need to start framing this conversation in a way to make decisions. Counselor DeAndretti.
I have a specific question regarding the curling club for me to understand, because my understanding is town land. So they use just the building. So technically, we can do whatever we want on this land.
Yeah, and I mean, that's
On the
absolutely, that's a point here when, that's why I'm trying to get us away from framing this all about underutilized land, because I think it's way more than that. I think from what I've heard from all the councillors, it's not all about just underutilized land that could be used for housing. A lot of this is just looking at tax equity in general and looking at some of these other thoughts about parking and community contributions. And I saw the director wanting to comment on the curling club too.
Yes, Mayor White, I just wanted to advise council that regardless of who the owner of a property is, once a property is leased, legitimately leased to a non-profit society for purposes of permissive tax exemptions and BC assessment, reviewing what various municipalities have done, that property is considered in effect to be temporarily owned by the nonprofit society, which is how you can have commercial buildings and property suddenly moving into the nonprofit zone. And then they do take a hard look at activities that go on in buildings. I've seen from past experience, they definitely go by. So for example, using the public market, they will have been by there at least once over the years and seen what's going on. And in their view, the town's decision to offer 100% there was legitimate, and they blessed it. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, we've gone through this over the last year with the drama around the curling club being identified as it went from BC assessment not seeing it as town land and not considering it taxable, and now seeing it, and that's the one we need to look at now, is it is taxable, they've identified. So we actually need, like the public market, we need to decide whether it gets a tax exemption or not. And we could start with that. We could start with the unused vacant properties. I see Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, thank you, through the mayor. I don't know if anyone, the other thing here is like, it would almost be worth removing the classes from, because I'm not sure, like, if you remove the classes from this, then you could almost determine, because unfortunately, some of these classes are obviously different. I'm not sure, I mean, if somebody wants to answer me regarding the Legion having two different types of classes on their property, but if you can look, like, even in three different types of classes, there's properties that are almost equal in value. Like, so you have the Sunshine Coast Community Services at $1,080,000. Their taxes are $12,517, where you have the Pentecostals Assembly, which is $1,081,000. Their taxes are like, basically $3,000 lower. And then if you look in the other class of building, where the Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society is $1,065,000, their taxes are even lower then. It's $4,770. So if you remove the classes, it might make it easier to make decisions saying, well, I mean, like, you're actually giving, someone in a different class, although we're just talking about land and taxes, twice as much of a exemption as somebody else sitting on the same type of property. Like, if you remove you know what I'm saying? Just because it's just because it's a church sitting on the property, or if it's the Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society, which might be doing the communities the same amount of benefit. I don't know, you could argue that, but the fact that you're giving one exemption, which is twice as much as the other one, might have to factor into what type of reduction or what type of exemption you should be giving. Like, that's all I'm saying. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but.
It might make sense, just in how we consider it and how,
Yes.
what the
That's what I'm
affordability
saying,
of
yeah.
kind of aspect of the organization. I think we do need to recognize that those classes are set by, again, by assessment, though we have no, unfortunately, we have no say at all on the assessment or those classes. And that took place again with the curling club, where they're in this strange situation where I think maybe staff can elaborate, but they're basically put in a commercial class, even though just because of their kind of recreation, and there are all these other recreational activities that are in a different class where they get a much lower rate. But for whatever reason, curling is in one of them. Curling seems to be discriminated against by assessment. I don't mind saying that, because it's like there's all these other recreational activities that are listed that qualify for a lower class rate, but for whatever reason they put curling into business and other, which makes it higher. However, a specific question I wanted to ask about the curling club is, and I think it's probably somewhere in all these materials we have, is they did appeal to BC Assessment, I understand, and could we just get a summary of what happened there, and if the number is up to date, which I think is 7,922, if that's the
Yes.
the result of their appeal?
That is up to date. The curling club had appealed BC assessment for 2023 and 2024, and as a result of that appeal, the assessment went down. I think it was approximately 150,000 for 2023, and in 2024, I believe it went up by 20,000. But the values between 2023 and 2024 for land remained relatively consistent. So that was the result of the appeal.
So, I mean, that's a good example of what you're saying, Councillor Lumley, is we're looking at a piece of land valued at 600, well, it's not even, it's the land that the building is on, that's it. As Councillor DeAndretti pointed out, they're not even technically leasing any of the land around it. It's only valued at 640,000, yet their tax hit is, $8,000 pretty much. So it's quite significant because of the class they're in. Any more kind of general comments or questions from council? Do we want to start with the curling club or start more on some of those vacant, kind of go by identifying the unused vacant properties, Councillor DeAndretti?
I would suggest, because there's an order of how the files are, I think it will be easier instead of scrolling. The financial report presented both reports in the same order. So to me, I think it's easier going one by one. And the Gibson Curling Club, I'm also curious if the land is ours. We can discuss what we want to see there, or not, because they're leased to the curling club.
No, that would be totally outside of the conversation we're having today, because there's no, that the land around the curling club is not up for tax exemption, or I want to really focus, like, we have a lot to talk about today on when it comes to the tax exemption, so if you look at the map, sorry, Councillor Andretti, let's look at these maps. Where is the curling club? That, I think, might be in a different order, though. When you look at the photo of the curling club, I believe what you'll see is that only the building is up for tax exemption.
Okay, I missed this one. Thank you.
I'll go to staff.
And Mayor White, I could clarify, yes, so that the town owns the land. It's leased the footprint under the improvement. That's the part connected with the exemption. And because the town didn't lease all the parking and other around, it's under the umbrella of the town's own statutory exemption. And that's why there's no taxes there, without getting into the pool and regional district and everything else, but regional district is statutory exempt too. So essentially, everything out on that broad property other than the curling rink is considered to be municipal, statutory exempt, and it's just the question of the curling club itself. And it's a nonprofit society, which is why council has the option
Thank you.
granted
Yeah.
permissive exemption.
It's only the footprint of the building we're talking about here, so talking about the land around it is not up today. It's a totally different conversation. But, I mean, to get into the curling club, they are a new applicant. They made a presentation to us. They're in their own category here, in these helpful categories that the department set out for us of an athletic club. A point I want to make about the curling club is this is only the building. I think that's important to recognize. And right across the street, pretty much, there are recreation services being offered by government, being offered by the regional district at a very, very high. We don't get to collect any taxes there because it's government run, but it's a very, very significant cost to the taxpayer to run those programs and run those facilities, whereas this is a bit of a different model. This nonprofit model is definitely a more, I'll say, a far, far less costly way of doing recreation, and I want to recognize that. And I think we can look at it that this is curling isn't something that everyone in the town does. It's members and others who are going and participating in curling, but I would say that is the situation also for a skating club or a hockey club across the street. So I'm inclined to look at certainly offering some kind of tax exemption to the curling club. And of course, we know the history of them having not having to pay any taxes for years and years. And they have this shock came where they suddenly did have to. And I think because it came late too, they have had to pay their taxes. I think we managed to give a grant partially for 2023, but we aren't able to this year. So they have had to pay some taxes due to that shock. Shocking change that they've undergone. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciated the amount of work and effort you could see through coming in as a delegation and also what they put forward in their package. I think that speaks a lot to also the way they have their community outreach, and they cover, we can say it's just curling, but they cover a huge amount of our community, from youth, right up to seniors, and just what they're doing with a lot of the different organizations. I think that they work hard at community inclusivity, and I do support this exemption.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. I certainly agree with what Councillor Thompson is saying. I looked in the delegation that came to council. I believe they said they have 183 members. I looked at their website to think, oh, okay, what's the opportunity for becoming a member? And they're sort of closed. They seem to be closed off at this 182 number. you know, I do appreciate a lot of the stuff they do, but I will admit I do have a bit of a difficulty with 100% exemption. Because it is a club, you pay memberships, it's a little over $300 to become a member, and then there's other charges that you're incurred with. So it's not like it's a free sports recreation facility to absolutely anyone. It's those who can afford it. And when they presented their financials to us last year, they're in reasonably good financial shape.
True, Councillor Kroll, but I mean, I will say, to my point earlier, not many organized sports realistically are free. I know this as a parent for sure, and other activities too. When it comes to dance, which I'm paying for right now, and I mean, it's there are definitely costs that need to be paid for, and yeah, sometimes they're extremely high. I'm sure there are higher ones than curling out there that for in facilities that do get tax exemptions. Councillor Lumley.
Thank you, through the mayor. I agree with Councillor Kroll, though. Maybe the difference might be that if somebody wants to join a sport at the community center, they're not told that they can't because it's full. So yeah, I don't agree with 100% exemption for the curling club either. I think when we looked at it, we spoke to them. You know, no disrespect to anybody that works there or volunteers there, but there are opportunities for they have a liquor license, they have a facility. There are opportunities for them to actually increase their revenue stream. Whether or not they deserve or want to do so is up to them, but I don't think, I think 100% is a lot, but I certainly would be amenable to finding a solution somewhere between, maybe in the middle.
Okay, something else we need to consider here is the length of time too for all, either for all of them or whether we're going to have a different approach for some versus others. We haven't talked about that, so I just want to identify that right now to council because we do need to. I think staff is suggesting 1 or 2 years. We probably don't want to go beyond that based on our decisions we made last year, but just want to identify that. Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor White, and certainly agree with you that, you know, the curling club is sort of the odd one out because it's not like they're sitting on a lot of land that they have control over. But to Councillor Lumley's point, and to sort of get this thing moving, I would move on a motion that the curling club receive at least a 50%.
You'll need to be more specific. Sorry, I can't accept a motion that says at least the 50%. We need to be.
Well, you cut me off before I finished.
Yeah, well, I had to cut you off on the at least word.
Between 50 and 75% for it.
Sorry, I can't accept a motion like that. We need to set a figure because we need to give clear direction to our staff to what the figure will be. To say 50 or 50 to 70.
Well,
we can't just
council on that number between 50 to 70.
Okay, well, I need an actual motion from somebody who's going to give a figure. Councillor Lumley? 50. Okay, Councillor Lumley saying 50. And for how long? Well, no, I think staff said, do we want to do 1 or 2, or do we want to we could do.
And again, Mayor White, just to advise council, it is a global decision, so it's 1 year for all of them or 2 years for all of them.
Okay, so we can't decide 2 for some and 1 for other. Yeah, okay.
Question regarding, if, let's say, we decide 2 years, but in the meantime, in 1 year, one of the organizations come with a proposal, are we looking at that and perhaps changing or no?
No, it can't be done. And I don't think that can be done with law. There's no opportunity to. I mean, I wouldn't advise it, that's for sure. I'll look to staff though.
Yes, Mayor White. This listing will be transcribed into a bylaw.
Yeah.
If some very significant change happened during the course of, let's say, not the rest of this year, but later this year. Council could, of course, always accept an application if it decided, this was that significant. And then if it settled on some amount exemption for someone, it could then direct staff to amend the bylaw. But usually with PTEs, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I've never
Come
seen that
along,
here.
it's
Yeah,
added to the list for the next time it's being renewed to consider at that time.
yeah. Thank you. Councillor Lumley?
Yeah, I was under the impression, and my motion was for 2 years. So
Okay.
that's only because you had mentioned that, and my motion was 50% for 2 years.
Okay, but I
All
do.
of them for 2 years. That's
Yeah, that we are, if we start to select 2 years, we are going down the road of saying all are for 2 years. So I want to flag that for council, because if there are some where we might be, if we're going to say, so I'll actually go to staff on this. If we are going to take a phased approach with some of them and say, say Councillor Thompson brought up parking, if we want to take an approach of saying, we're going to do, we're going to take your exemption down on parking 25% next year and then 50% the second year, can we do that in one now, or do we have to do 1-year terms in order to do that and reconsider?
Yes, Mayor White, I have not seen that done before. However, I have drafted several of these bylaws. So I suppose in a bylaw that's being set out to cover 2 years, it would be possible in there to say, well, so-and-so housing corporation has a percentage for 24, and then the percentage for 25 will be this.
So we could say, this is 2 years, and in 2025, it's going to be a 75% exemption, and then in 2026, it's going to be a 50% exemption. So we still have that option written into the bylaw. It's a little more complicated, but that's something to consider if we're going to do 2 years. Councillor DeAndrade?
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know if a motion is really on the table, but I like this support, I like this approach, like a phasing out. And it gives time, and then people understand that we are serious about it. And so they have time to move and get prepared. Yeah.
So on the specific curling club point, I think considering that phasing, thanks. And I see Councillor Kroll, you've got your hand up, but I just want to ask this question too, so we're clear on what we're doing. What has the curling club paid, I guess this last year? Or is it even I think it's the last 2 years now they've had to pay. I mean, I think a grant offset it in the first year, but we couldn't do that in the second year. Do we just get that information so we can kind of consider the phasing piece?
Last year, the total tax bill was, I believe it was 8,900, and if I recall, there was a grant somewhere around 3,000. I don't recall I can't see that in the records right now, what that grant amount was, but I recall it being somewhere around 3,000. And then the tax bill for this year, for 2024, the tax bill for this year, there was a refund for the BC assessment appeal, and that refund was $1,769. So the actual total bill for this year, as we have it in here, was $79.22.
So I'm just asking that so council knows that the curling club did have to come up with $79.22 this year. So if we were to go ahead with this 50%, it'd be less than they've had to pay the last 2 years, actually, I believe. Yeah. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. And this would be a question to staff. If we say 2 years and the bylaw is drafted, is it easier for staff to, if we do it 1 year, and then if someone does come forward, as Councillor Andretti was suggesting, or Mayor White was suggesting, with a great proposal, they can be dealt with, and then we move on from there. My concern is if 3 or 4 people come with changes, is it going to be more challenging for staff having to
Yeah.
amend the bylaw?
Thank you, Councillor Cole. That's why I brought that up, is I don't think we should be encouraging that. I mean, if we're gonna go 2 years, we should go 2 years. And if we're expecting or encouraging organizations to come forward with new proposals, we should go 1 year. So I just want council to consider that. I mean, we should do one or the other. I mean, I think, I mean, in extraordinary circumstances, technically we could amend the bylaw, but I don't think that's the kind of default approach we should take. We should either pick 1 year or 2. I think I saw Councillor Thompson, and then back to you, Councillor Kroll. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. We have been reviewing this for 2 years, and we've created, in my opinion, a lot of opportunity for these organizations to come forward, present packages, delegations, some have, and I'm 2 years is where I feel like we should be on this, and if we have the opportunity to be able to stagger in that 1 year, 2 year, but I feel like 2 years is where I'm sitting on this.
Okay, Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. I sort of agree with Councillor Thompson. What I was going to suggest is that we go 1 year and indicate to the recipients of these permissive tax credits that it's going to be our intention to keep reducing the amount they receive as a permissive tax credit unless we see more positive action with respect to the community needs. So it's made clear to them that as we proceed next year, they're going to be knocked back another 25 or whatever percent. And, you know, hopefully that might get things moving.
Okay, but I do want, Councillor Kroll, there's such a variety of situations and organizations here. I don't know if that message is going to apply to all of them. I mean, it's all, and even the ones it does apply to, it applies to at very different degrees. So I just want everyone to keep that in consideration. I mean, some of these situations we might be looking, they're already doing a lot of contributions to the community, but maybe council feels that just going forward, we need to start taxing parking. And it doesn't really have anything to do with community contributions. I don't know if that's where council's gonna go, but this is a really complicated process, because if we start making blanket statements at the start, then we need to consider those blanket statements are gonna have to apply to every single applicant we have here. Councillor D'Andrade?
Well, I wonder, in order to move forward, if we can, okay, we have, I mean, from my understanding, we have an idea with this particular that we want 75 and 50. So can we not make the motion, but make a note, and then we proceed, and then we will have an idea if 1 year is better than 2 years? I mean, it seems logical, 2 years, it seems easier, but we don't know what we're gonna encounter moving forward. So do we have to make a motion for each one right now, when we just make a note?
Well, we don't, because we're in committee right now, so I mean, we're working this out. But we don't even have to make a motion immediately. And I haven't even declared that motion yet, because we're still kind of talking it out. Councillor Lumley?
Okay, if we do that, if you do anything, if you do the 1 year, please don't tell me about respecting staff time, because we're going to be right back here next year. We're going to be changing bylaws. Someone's going to come in with a proposal. I mean, you want to eat up staff time, so whatever you do, don't say you're respecting staff time, because you're not. I'm saying 2 years. 2 years will give people ample time to come up with a plan, or if they have, like, you can't do it in a year. There's nothing gets done in a year. 2 years, it'll give the staff some certainty. It'll be easier to prepare the budget for the next 2 years, because we've given them a 2-year window. So that's, I mean, it's too wishy-washy, like 1 year, and what about this, what about this? I agree with Councillor DeAndrade. You say, hey, for the next 2 years, it's this, and we are going to be increasing or decreasing the exemption on parking lot areas. We have every intention of doing that, and as long as people know that, they can see it coming. It doesn't have to be written in a bylaw. They can watch the meeting on YouTube, say, hey, listen, it's gonna happen, but for now, this is what it is, you know? Sink or swim, I guess, I don't know, I mean, but I just like to see it a little bit, I don't want it complicated.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that clarity, Councillor Lumley, and what I really didn't, what I was really concerned about is saying 2 years, but, you know, we'll give you a chance to send in a special, I know you're not saying that, but that's what I was really concerned about in our earlier conversation. So without taking a motion yet, like maybe we'll do kind of more of an omnibus motion of a few of them at a time. I hear, because I think that makes sense when we're talking, because we are kind of we're having to make the decision about the 2 years for all of them, and we're having to make some policy decisions for a lot of them at the same time. So it's, in some ways, it could be more difficult to kind of pigeonhole them and do them one by one when we know. So we're looking at, I hear council's looking at 50% for the curling club. There's kind of a consensus around that. Councillor DeAndrade?
I thought we had said that we are phasing out, so
No.
year 1, 75, year 2, 50.
No, I only heard you say that, actually. I didn't hear anyone else say that. And
You mentioned Victoria, that's why I'm bringing
parking in
this.
Victoria, I mean.
Well, you said
so-
Victoria is taking this approach.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the curling club, as I asked staff about, was paying $8,900 at first, which went down. Anyway, I think last year it was $79.22, right? That's what we heard from staff. So they were just paying $79.22. So if we go to if the 50% that's been proposed is going to be less than that. It's actually going to be less than that. So I don't know if this concept of phasing makes any sense for this.
For this or for everybody? Because we have to
For
apply
this
to
example,
everybody.
because we're going one by one. I'm sorry, my head's going to explode already but I heard 50%. Okay,
Okay,
so I'm going with that.
Okay, Mayor, just a clarification. Can we say just 50% for this one, but then in another case, we say, so we are coming just with one number for the next 2
Yes.
years? Okay, so it's not a phasing out approach, okay.
So if we're going 2 years, this would be 50%, 50%.
So there's a motion on the table, it's been seconded.
Well, it wasn't really finalized, so I mean, there was no, so I'm just trying to go through these here, and we'll probably make a motion with a number of them all at the same time, because I don't want to end up going down a road with, and again, these are recommendations for council leaders, so they're recommendations, so we can change them, but I also don't want to end up going down the road where we kind of make some blanket decisions on things, and then when we get to some of the other ones, we go, actually, we don't want to do it that way. So maybe we'll have a look at least a few of these at the same time, and then make a motion on. Councillor Lumley?
Yeah, they've already been separated into classes, like what you pointed
Okay.
out earlier, like.
Okay, so I'm going to
is
go
one
back on that
class.
and make a motion. Yeah, go ahead. So 50% over 2 years for.
For the active service clubs, which is the curling club.
Yeah.
That's it.
And in doing so, we're recognizing that 2 years is going to apply to all of them we have to recognize that. Okay. I think Councillor Kroll was prepared to second that earlier. Okay, yeah, there he is again. Okay, any discussion on this one? Councillor Kroll, I see your hand up. Is that on this?
We're just talking specifically curling club,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
Yes.
the motion on the curling club. Okay. Corporate Officer?
Sorry, there was a lot of discussion there, so I just want to be sure that we've got the motion articulated correctly. I have that active service clubs be granted a permissive tax exemption in the amount of 50% of total taxes payable for over the next 2 years.
Does that work? Yeah, okay. All those in favor? The motion carries. So we've got one down, but that's an entire category, and it was a very, it's a very specific situation, so I think that's some good progress here. The next one on the list I'm looking at, there's all kinds of lists here in all the complex information we have, but is Good Samaritan Canada, which is also in its own category, so that might be a good one to look at next. Councillor DeAndretti?
I'll make a motion to remain 75% for the next 2 years. I think they provide incredible service to the community.
Okay. Yeah. Seconded by Councillor Kroll. Don't forget to second over here. Any discussion on this one? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Thompson, did you have discussion? No. Okay. All those in favor? The motion carries. And then, I'm just kind of going through the different lists here. That was a convenient one because we've now gone through two. Sorry, I just want to check too for it's going to be complicated because, we started out by saying athletic or service clubs. We use that whole category. We could do that again. Or just say Good Samaritan Canada, but I think when we get into some of these other ones, they're going to be different. They're not going to be for the whole category. So we can look at, and there's some of these are subsets too. I can see we could go to the churches now, which receive statutory exemptions, and we'll probably might be approaching some of these differently from one another. But when we look at the not-for-profit corporations, some of these provide housing, some of them don't. The art gallery is in a total situation of its own. Community services has two now. Could we go to that community services example? I think that of the new one, and I think that's a bit of a unique situation too, where here's a nonprofit that's been leasing a private commercial space for quite a number of years now. And there are other nonprofits in town that lease private spaces. So this would be a bit precedent setting, I feel, like if we were, and I think there was a phrase for it too, and a different kind of angle of approach that I learned in the last couple of weeks. I think it would be precedent setting if we were to go down the road of giving nonprofits that are actually leasing space from private companies. I'm looking at staff to help clarify this, but you can jump in, Councillor Lumley.
Well, I don't know if, to the mayor, I don't know if this is, it does get complicated, especially in my mind, because if somebody, that would encourage people to lease out their private property to a nonprofit at market rates and receive a tax exemption, because the property would get, like the property would get taxed normally. That's a really different animal than a church that owns the property and the parking lot. Like, yeah, you'd really have to segregate those out, and then in my mind, you'd have to, like, if the property owner's actually leasing it to a charitable organization for less than market rate, then you'd have to kind of take that into consideration, because you wouldn't want to penalize a property owner that's trying to help a charitable organization by charging them below market rate, and then you're saying, well, we're going to tax you. So I don't know. It's a conundrum. I don't know if I explained that properly, but maybe people.
Yeah, and it might, I mean, yeah, it might be help to get some clarification from staff on this too, because I'm a bit confused about it. In that, do we actually tax Sunshine Coast Community Services directly on this, or is it is it being passed down to them really in their rent? Or
It would be passed down to
Yeah,
them
this is
through
weird.
the savings from having an exemption would be passed down to them from the landowner. So the property owner has to ensure they've provided a letter to say, yes, if there will be property tax exemption, then it will not benefit them, but it would benefit the leaseholder, which is community services. So they are in a sense confirming that they would, the cost of the lease would be $5,500 less for that year.
And Mayor White, if I may just add on this one, there's two things that council and BC Assessment would want to see. First of all, between the property owner paying the property tax bill and the nonprofit society, that the lease requires the flow through of any exemption benefit. And then secondly, that the activity that the nonprofit organization is doing, if they're conducting full-on market rental business, then that wouldn't be eligible. If they're clearly providing below market rates, it doesn't matter how much below, but enough that people would acknowledge that this is below market, then it opens it up to council having the discretion to decide whether there should be an exemption there or not.
Yeah, I mean, and I just go back to my initial concern about precedent, and I don't know if this is a road we want to go down. And also, I think, if that's our decision, I wonder if there's a policy change we can make to clarify that we're not open to these kinds of applications. If that's the road we go down. Is there something in the policy right now that says that we're open to, because this is the first one we've ever got, I believe. I don't think there's any others on this list that are in this
This is the
situation.
first time it's happened, but it's not a policy issue. It's under the charter, where the charter states that it can be the land or improvements that are owned or held. So in this case, it's being held. So it is under the charter. It's just that we haven't had this experience before in Gibsons, where a nonprofit that is renting a space has come forward with an application.
Okay. Councillor DeAndretti.
Thank you. I think I agree with you, Mayor, that we set precedent, and I agree with concerns that Councillor Lumley has with increasing staff time. I mean, I can only imagine the amount of organizations that's going to come for. It's going to be very complicated because we need to. That's my understanding. I think, yeah, I mean, they have land, right? I mean, they have the thrift store land. Potentially, they can find even an office there. So I would rather not to.
I also still wonder about the policy. Like, if we can't clarify on our own policies what kind of I mean, I appreciate there are senior levels of government set out what's eligible for a tax exemption, but I wonder if we can't kind of set closer in our own bylaw what we're willing to actually consider. Because, I mean, I know, I feel like I've read at least one municipality's bylaw that says they're not taking any more. Like, they're closing it. So if they can do that, why can't we at least say, well, we're not going to take any more that are in this specific situation? Maybe the Director of Finance can clarify.
Mayor White, council certainly can set policy along those lines. It can be as simple as no more permissive tax exemptions beyond the existing ones. It could be by a class of them. And certainly where the whole area of non-market rentals arises, a council could say, oh, we don't just want it below market rent, whatever that is. It has to meet some classification of affordable housing, which we stipulate would be no more than 75% of market rates.
Thank you. And I see Councillor Cole. I just want to clarify too with staff, in this situation, it's a new application, right? So would we would we be making a motion to deny the application essentially in this one, rather than setting a rate of 0 or 50 or?
Yes,
Guess
it's
we
in
could
the,
do either,
it's
but-
in the application stage. I had only put in 100% so that you would know what that value would be, but it is an application at this stage.
Okay. Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor White. I appreciate what everyone's been saying about, these groups sort of coming forward, but the Director of Finance seems to indicate that we have the ability and there are guidelines in place that if someone is leasing a space, they are providing a necessary community service. And as long as the tax credit is passed through, so it's reflected in a reduced rent that the society can afford, it seems reasonable. Like, I know the situation of available office space in the community varies from time to time, but it can be challenging for groups that, they need to be in places where they're accessible to their clients. So, I'm in favor of supporting this with the proviso that the guidelines are in place, as the Director of Finance has indicated, to ensure that it's if all the appropriate boxes are ticked and that no one's profiting from it.
Okay. I hear you, Councillor Kroll. I do think, I did hear Councillor Lumley's concerns too. And I do think if we did go down this route, we need to expect more applications to come in from nonprofits in the same situation. So I think that would be an indication of a change in direction we're going, I think, in welcoming these kinds of applications. So Councillor Kroll?
But I think the Director of Finance has indicated that there are certain criteria that we can put on this, that, they have to meet certain things. It's not just going to be a land rush for office space by nonprofits to get a tax exemption.
Sure, but it's also it's still a change, because we know of other nonprofits that are in commercial spaces right now that aren't applying for a tax exemption, but we're opening a door for that now, if we were to approve this. Director?
Yes, Mayor White, I just wanted to confirm you're absolutely correct. There would be potentially an awful lot of entities that would qualify, and what other municipalities have been doing recently is just saying, or asking the question on applications for these groups, if they're receiving any fee-for-service contract revenue from government, and they don't get into how much that covers, it's just, oh, you're doing fee-for-services, then we consider that fee-for-service or contract revenue should be covering all your costs, including real estate, and therefore those municipalities are saying we don't want to grant you a permissive tax exemption. If you're getting no help, no fee for service, that's a different matter, but if you are, we would like to pass.
Yeah, that's a really good point too that we need to consider, is that, I'm familiar with some of these nonprofit situations, and they certainly do. That's sometimes in their program budget applications that they sent into the provincial or federal government. Rent will be on there, and that'll include whatever they're having to pay for taxes. And I think we need to consider tax equity here again too. It's like, so I see Councillor Kroll again.
Thank you. Is that a question that we can pose to this applicant before we make a final decision in September?
No, I'm wondering, does anyone want to make a motion on this? Councillor DeAndrade? Because I appreciate your going down this angle, Councillor Kroll. I'm not sure everybody here in the room shares it, so I just want to see if, I want to tease that out a bit. Councillor DeAndrade?
Yeah, we'll make a motion that this model, because to me it's a new model, we don't accept it. I don't know if you
Okay.
can phrase better, but.
So I think maybe the motion would be that we don't accept this application, and further that is it the bylaw? It would be a bylaw, right? This isn't a policy. Do we have a policy or a bylaw setting this out? Mayor White,
Council would direct staff to update the policy with respect to these kinds of applications going forward. And in terms of this application right now, would just make the decision not to be included in the next bylaw.
Yeah. Okay. And I think when it comes to these kinds of applications, that language will be clarified to be nonprofits renting commercial space or leasing commercial space. Does that?
And receiving fee-for-service contract revenue for what they do, that government contracts that provide rental expense coverage.
Yeah, that's the motion.
But does the nonprofits renting leasing commercial space, does that cover it all though? Because I don't know if there's any here we need to be worried about that it wouldn't cover. I think that might cover. I think that covers all the situations.
Well, we can always go back.
Okay. Okay. So that motion's clear. Seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, all those in favor? Yeah. Okay, that motion carries. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Lemley.
Yeah, I'd also like to make a motion for properties receiving statutory exemptions, like all the churches that are listed there. So I'd like to make a motion that that still like seeking like the 2 years. We're not going to go through parking, but my motion would be to bring up to like normalize the statutory exemptions with the town exemptions, to bring the exemption to each one of these churches to 75%. So my examples are, if you go from the bottom up, you say Roman Catholic Church, they get a 50%, and a 50% from us, that's 100%. They'd now get a 50% statutory, which is statutory, and we'd give them a 25%. Calgary Baptist, statutory 27, so we'd have to bring that.
Sorry.
Do you get it? Like
No, I don't get it.
on your list?
Because I'm not looking at the right list.
That's just all the churches, right? So then our exemption would be 48%. Jehovah's Witness, 35% statutory. Our exemption would be then
Slow down,
40%.
slow down. I need you to slow down, sorry, because I'm not looking at the same list.
It's just to equalize all the churches, all the places of worship to 75%. So it's just to average out between the statutory exemption and the exemptions we're giving to 75%. Make it all equal for 2 years. That's what I suggest, instead of nitpicking between, if like for whatever reason the Roman Catholic Church gets 50% statutory, well, who cares? They're going to have to pay 25%. That will give them only 25%, not 50. Obviously, the statutory exemption's less for the Calgary Baptist Church. Nobody's saying the Roman Catholic Church is better than them, so their statutory will be higher from us, or our exemption will be higher. Does that? Do you get it? So at the end of the day, every church has 75%. That's a motion I'd like to make.
Okay. I do hear, I mean, I don't know if, this is good for discussion. I don't know if we have a seconder yet, but, because especially we need to clarify it and understand it. And I see staff's hand up too. I do want to point out this would be, I want to clarify, this would be going in a different direction from assessing the community contributions of these, like we've taken a lot of time to send out these questionnaires and ask them to answer questions about their community contributions to justify the tax exemption. So this will be going in a bit of a different direction of that by saying the community contribution doesn't matter. We're just going to have an equal, they're all going to be the same. So, I mean, that's one concern I have with this, and another one was one of the other points I had too. Yeah, I guess just considering underutilized land and parking, a bit more specifically, this would be going in a different direction from that too.
Well, step one, I think we said step two would be after the 2 years.
Sorry, could you put your mic on just so everyone can hear?
It's step one. I thought we discussed this because after 2 years, it's like a warning shot. It's like kind of like, hey, we're serious, and you have 2 years to figure it out. I thought that we already said that, but
Okay, I mean, we sent the letter out last year saying we're gonna make decisions based on your community contributions and based on we're adding these questions. I think we added questions 2 years ago now. So it's going in a bit of a different, I see Councillor DeAndretti and Councillor Kroll both with hands up. I think Councillor Kroll's been waiting longer. Councillor Kroll, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor White. And it's to your point about community contributions. For example, St. Bart's, they operate the food bank, they've operated the winter shelter. They provide overflow parking for the Heritage Playhouse, which is another, registered nonprofit, town-owned land. So, and they don't have a huge parking lot. They have a relatively small parking lot, although they do have a green space treed area, which does serve other community needs. So, I don't think with the churches, it's quite as easy just to make a sweeping blanket statement.
Okay, yeah, I tend to agree. Councillor DeAndretti?
Yeah, I was going to make the suggestion that what Councilor Lumsey's proposal to me is a general guideline for churches. And as we analyze the ones that are providing something, we can make an exception. So it doesn't need to be a motion right now. I agree if the church is not offering anything meaningful community-wise according to our definition or whatever we put in our letter, then we can do the 75 for the next 2 years.
Yeah, it might be a model to look at a few of them, but maybe not all of them.
Generally speaking.
Okay.
And then the ones we do, then we go one by one. So we don't need to make a motion now.
And then another point here too is that one church here owns 2 properties, and Councillor Thompson pointed out earlier just about the priority for unused vacant properties, and one of these is fully unused vacant property. So we'd be definitely going in a different direction if we're not going to make a special consideration for that instance that's owned by the 2 different persons.
What are we doing with this one, Councilor?
Well, it's 12:51. Maybe we'll take a break at 12:55, and we've got some recommendations to put forward to council, and otherwise this is on the agenda to talk further at council. Councillor Lumley, do you want?
Okay, it's exactly what I was saying, because that's why this is on the table, like is permissive tax exemptions. Now, if we nitpick at what people are doing socially, that could take like a year. And then, because then you'd have to reanalyze, you'd have to say, okay, hey, they operate the food bank, but they get food donations. They get donations, I donate to the St. Bart's Food Bank. They get all my bottles, I give them extra money to do, there's all sorts of things that go into it. I thought this is just, the reason why we brought this up is just like a basic thing saying, hey, listen, I just think we're really overcomplicating these discussions, like bringing in little minutia of and I from what I understand, I didn't hear anything mind-blowing that anybody came in with like their community involvement. Zero housing came in, which was the essence of it. So I mean, I just don't understand. Then let's just not do this. Let's just leave it at 100%. I don't get why we're doing this.
Okay, Councillor Lumley, I hear you, but I also don't feel at all that that's been the direction of council for the last year. I think we've been going in a completely different direction. We sent a letter out to the community. We've been changing our questionnaire. We've had numerous discussions we even had a discussion where there was a more preliminary kind of report back to council, and I put it out to council saying, like, I wanted to get clear direction from council at that meeting. I said, look, do we want a flat out basic formula right now? And what I heard from council, I feel I heard it from every single member of council, no, we need to go through these one by one and consider the nuances of each situation. And I'm attracted by the idea of just having a blanket way of easily dealing with this, but that's not the direction we went down. We decided not to go that direction, so this is where we're at. And I've been expecting a pretty intensive discussion on this, and that's why it's on the agenda twice today. So, I mean, and it's, we've been preparing for this for months, and it would be intensive, and that's why staff has prepared all this exhaustive data on it too, because council has clearly indicated they wanted to have this detailed discussion. So this would be a really big shift to now say we're not going to consider all these details. But we do need to break and then go to our council meeting at 1 o'clock and revisit this later in the council agenda. Councillor Thompson, did you have one more comment before we do that?
Yeah, I'll just say that, I think we're all feeling the same thing, which is we want to be able to simplify this in a way. And we did send out those questionnaires, and I know myself, and I'm sure everybody else in council has went through every one of them to look at it. And I didn't see a lot of change personally from the questions that we posed, which makes me feel as though there is an opportunity for us then to implore a leeway, maybe not as far as what Councillor Lumley's saying, but in the direction of saying, let's look at this in a larger macro picture, because I didn't see anything that jumped out at me that said this is very directed at change by any single organization that was specific about housing or what they were going to do. I didn't see that. So I can be corrected, but.
No, but then what do we do about the ones that have been doing a lot of work? Just there maybe there's no change, but the no change is they are an affordable housing society, or Kiwanis has been doing affordable housing for decades, and some of the churches approach community involvement differently, and maybe there's been no change, but it doesn't mean that
and maybe we keep that
they're
as
all
a
the
no
same in terms of the values that we've been trying to put out there in terms of what we want to recognize. So we'll continue this conversation at council. We've got a few of them down for recommendations that'll go forward, and we've had a lot of discussion to hopefully help during our council meeting. I see our corporate officer. Do you have any?
I'm assuming that what you're suggesting is that there be a motion to recess the committee of the whole meeting?
No, we're going to adjourn.
You're going to
Yeah.
adjourn until.
That work for you?
No?
Yeah. Okay. We're going to adjourn, and we've already got this on our council agenda, so yeah. So the next meeting of regular committee of the whole is September 24th, 3:30, and we need a motion to adjourn. Unless someone wants to recess, but I don't really see, we've already got it on our council agenda, so. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Kroll. All those in favor? Motion carries, so the meeting's adjourned.